Right, then we are going to begin. So I will look at only two more passages from the text before I start discussing topics and other things. So one is uh, in Act 5, Scene 3, where Macbeth meets the doctor for the last time and asks him about the condition of Lady Macbeth. So he asks, "How does your patient, doctor?" This is line 38 of scene 3. "Doctor, not so sick, my lord, as she is troubled with thick coming fancies that keep her from rest." Macbeth, "Cure her of that. Canst thou not minister to a mind diseased, plucked from the memory a rooted sorrow, raise out the written troubles of the brain, and with some sweet oblivious antidote cleanse the stuffed bosom of that perilous stuff which weighs upon the heart?" So the doctor says that uh, Lady Macbeth's disease is not so much physical as it is mental, or of the spirit, of the mind. Thick coming fancies, fancy refers to the mind. And Macbeth fully understands this and asks him whether he has any cure for the disease of the mind, and the language in which he speaks, that can you not minister to a mind diseased, can you not cure, can you not treat a diseased mind and pluck out from the memory some rooted sorrow. If we read these lines, these appear to be the very concept of modern psychology or modern psychoanalysis. Freud had suggested that some rooted cause or some trauma, some sorrow that lies hidden in the unconscious, that needs to be brought out through speech, by making the patient speak lying in a couch in a semi-conscious state or in a hypnotized state, to make the patient speak out that which he or she has repressed and raise out the written troubles of the brain. So clearly, uh, Shakespeare is aware of the psychological sickness, and that it has to do with the brain and not any other part of the body. Raise out, that is, erase. And with some sweet oblivious antidote cleans the stuffed bosom of that perilous stuff that weighs upon her. So there is some secret in her bosom which is dangerous if it is there. So it needs to be cleansed. It needs to be taken out, plucked out by some sweet antidote. But obviously, Macbeth is asking for something for which there was no such medical treatment or medical diagnosis at his time. Now, madness was something that concerned Shakespeare in many of his plays. You all know that apart from Macbeth, in Hamlet, Ophelia becomes mad. Then King Lear becomes mad. There are many examples. So Shakespeare was uh, kind of very much interested in this part of human life, or this aspect of humanity, uh, the mind, which was the least known, and the diseases of the mind. And as there was no treatment at the time of madness, so mad people were kept chained and sometimes beaten up and so on and so forth. So when the doctor says therein the patient must minister to himself, that is, in the matter of the mind, the doctor cannot do anything, the patient has to consciously do it. Then Macbeth is furious, is very angry that that medical science is so helpless. So he says, throw physic to the dogs. Physic means medical science. So if your medical science is so useless, then throw it to the dogs. I will none of it. Come, put mine armor on, give me my stuff. Now Macbeth was getting ready for war, and somebody was assisting him put all the armors, all the body armors in place. And while putting on his armor, he was speaking to the doctor, and he says, Doctor, the thanes fly from me. If thou couldst, doctor, cast the water of my land, find her disease, and purge it to a sound and pristine health, I would applaud thee to the very echo that should applaud again. Cast the water, that is, he is referring to examination of urine. So he says that you have to find a way to cure my wife, cure Lady Macbeth, and similarly, my land, my country is also suffering from a disease, and if possible, you treat my land also, so that the thanes do not fly from me. That is, he feels that his followers are leaving him. All the noblemen, many of them, they are leaving him, and therefore the treatment of Lady Macbeth becomes symptomatic of the treatment of the disease of the land. That is a metaphor that Shakespeare often uses as a disease of the commonwealth, and some kind of medicine, some ointment, rhubarb, cyme, or some purgative drug would scout the English hens. So prescribe some drug, some medicine which will make the English go away, like some purgative drug makes the poison leave the body. Similarly, my country is infected by the English, and you speak of some medicine that will make the English go away. So this is one paragraph. I read it because I think that here we have an obvious awareness expressed about the difficulties of the mental disease, the mental sickness. But in the final act, because this is the final act, the personal story becomes deeply intermeshed with the national history. So the personal story of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, their problems, their sickness, that becomes entangled with the problem of Scotland, and as if the whole of Scotland is suffering from a disease, as we often find in the expressions of Macduff and Malcolm. Then I come to scene 5, where Macbeth receives the news of the death of Lady Macbeth. And this is a curious speech that Macbeth makes, because he appears to be almost untouched, or rather very little touched by the news of the death of his wife. And this is very much ironical and also sad, because we have seen that his wife had been his partner throughout the play, and here Macbeth almost seems to be callous about her death, but there must be a reason for that. So Seaton comes, and Macbeth asks him why were the women crying. And then uh, Seaton says, "The queen, my lord, is dead. She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing." Now, this speech is well known as poetic speech. Many of these lines are poetic, but uh, it has a significance as to uh, Macbeth's emotions at this particular moment. So when he hears the news of his wife's death, he appears to be blasé. You know the word blasé? I write in the chat box. Blasé. The last E should have an acute accent, which I can't give here. So blasé means a little not exactly callous, but overworked, or finds nothing new in this, so accepts it with nonchalance. She should have died hereafter. That is, she might have died later. However, now that she has died, her death does not mean much at this point. Why? There would have been a time for such a word. That is, there would have been a time when her death would have cost me a lot of suffering. But that time is past. I am past that point. I have come to such a point of mental agony and suffering that my wife's death does not make me suffer anymore. And why this? Because he looks at his own life and he looks at world in a philosophical manner as a futile progression from moment to moment, from day to day, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. So each tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day. Small steps from one day to another. And there is a sense of monotony in the consecutive passing of days. 3 times he repeats the word tomorrow, which means that these tomorrows, they have little significance and they keep on arriving until the end of recorded time. So what is recorded time? That is the time which the Bible allows for the world, after which the apocalypse comes and the creation is withdrawn. So tomorrows will go on creeping in taking small steps from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. So these are insignificant. Why? And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. So tomorrow is the future. The future appears insignificant. Yesterday is the past, and that is insignificant too. Why? Because all the yesterdays have faced death. So they only go to the way of death. Lighted fools. That is, if we take it as metaphor for human life. So every human being, like a fool, progresses towards death. Why dusty death? Because the Bible says, dust thou art, to dust returnest. You are dust, made of dust, and you return to dust. Out, out, brief candle. So now the metaphor of candle. So life is being compared to a candle. Life is but a walking shadow. So as long as the candle is burning, we see the shadow on the wall. We see the shadows of people on the wall. But the moment the candle is extinguished, there is complete darkness, there is nothing. So life is like a walking shadow. What is a shadow? A shadow is that which is not reality. So Macbeth does not find any significance in this life, and it appears to him as a shadow rather than reality. And then another metaphor, this time from the theatre. So now a human being is compared to an actor, a poor player that struts and frets his hours upon the stage and then is heard no more. So nobody remembers an actor after the act is over. So he has a limited hour, maybe 1 hour or so he will act upon the stage, and after that he will have no more dialogue, nobody will remember him. So human beings are like that. Their lives are very brief, like the brief act of an actor on the stage. And then another comparison, life is now compared with a story, a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So if a story is told by an idiot, we may imagine that that story has no significance. And there may be a lot of sound and fury, but it does not have any meaning. Therefore, to Macbeth, this worldly affair, all the struggles, all the fights, all the battles, everything appeared to him to be vain. Sound and fury, there is a lot of sound, a lot of external actions may be there, but there is no inner meaning to them. There is no significance to them. So after this, I will not follow the text anymore, and I come to something else. Do you have any questions? I come to the excerpts that I have given you from L.C.Knight's book Explorations and the essay How Many Children Had Lady Macbeth. Now I already told you basically the content of L.C.Knight's, but here I would like to emphasize a little more by reading from the book. He writes, a play of Shakespeare's is a precise, particular experience. A poem and a precision and particularity are exactly what is lacking in the greater part of Shakespeare criticism. Criticism that deals with Hamlet or Othello in terms of abstractions that have nothing to do with the unique arrangement of words that constitutes these plays. So L.C.Knight is critical of Shakespearean criticism, which vaguely speaks of the many ideas and themes in abstract terms. On the contrary, he says that the plays are very precise because Shakespeare chooses every word with a lot of caution. And therefore we have to look at the poem, that is the poetry in the play, as well as the precise meaning, the precise significance of the words, and certain things that general critics overlook. These things should be taken care of. So, what are the things that people overlook, and what is the main theme? Now, he very clearly says that there are two main themes which can only be separated for the purpose of analysis, are blended in the play. So, we have to remember that when we analyze a play, we speak of different themes. In the play itself, they are not separate, they are all intertwined. That we have to remember. So, the two themes are blended in the play, the themes of the reversal of values and of unnatural disorder. So, that begins from the very first scene in Macbeth, when the witches say that fair is foul and foul is fair. It signifies reversal of values and unnatural order, disorder. And closely related to each is a third theme, that of the deceitful appearance and consequent doubt, uncertainty and confusion. Deceitful appearance, so deception, it begins from the witches, then Lady Macbeth and Macbeth, they deceive everybody, then the theme of deception continues. The Thane of Cawdor, who is a traitor, so the King Duncan says that there is no art to know the mind's construction in the face. While looking at somebody's face, you cannot understand him. So there is deception, a theme inherent in the play, and uncertainty and confusion. For example, the equivocations, the dubious, ambiguous languages of the prophecies, they lead to uncertainties, they lead to confusion, and Macbeth tries to follow them, Macbeth believes in them, but he seems to be perennially confused. Were these equivocations, were these prophecies true, or were they false, meant to deceive him? So there is uncertainty and confusion. All this is obscured by false assumptions about the category drama. Macbeth has greater affinity with the wasteland than with the doll's house. So, drama would mean a well-laid plot, as in Ibsen's Doll's House. But in Shakespeare's play, in Macbeth, plot is of course there, but it has a nature of using or involving a great number of themes and ideas, sometimes philosophical ideas as well. So all these can be found, for example, in T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, or philosophical thought which can be found in sometimes in epic poems. So L.C.Knight means that we cannot treat Macbeth merely generically as a drama and its plot and so on and so forth. There is so much in excess of drama. What is the excess? The poetry is the excess. The philosophy is the excess. So these are not exactly necessary for drama. So you read the importance of being earnest. You read any restoration play. There you will find mere plot. You won't find philosophy. You won't find poetry that much. Okay. Then something important, important statement that L.C.Knight makes. I have called Macbeth a statement of evil, but it is a statement not of a philosophy but of ordered emotion. This ordering is, of course, a continuous process. It is not merely something that happens in the last act corresponding to the denouement or unraveling of the plot. So, statement of evil, yes, evil is perhaps the main theme of the play. But L.C.Knight says that evil is presented through an ordered representation of emotion. And it is not merely in the final act that we see the great evil, but throughout the play, the emotions of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, they are presented through them. We may say, evil is represented in the play. And it is no use saying that we are quietened, purged, or exalted at the end of Macbeth or of any other tragedy. It is no use taking one step nearer the play and saying we are purged, etc., because we see the downfall of the wicked man, or because we realize the justice of Macbeth's doom whilst retaining enough sympathy for him or admiration of his potential qualities to be filled with a sense of waste. Now, these are statements which we can, of course, legitimately make about Macbeth, the play. That at the end of the play there is a sense of purgation because Macbeth, the wicked man, meets with his doom, and the justice of that, and then the sense of waste. That is something A.C. Bradley, another famous 19th century or early 20th century Shakespeare critic, A.C. Bradley, his most famous book is Shakespearean Tragedy. A.C. Bradley said that Shakespeare's tragedies give us a sense of waste. What is wasted? Material quality, human quality, great potentials, great qualities of Macbeth, the hero. These are wasted. That sense of waste, according to Bradley, is a quality of Shakespearean tragedy. But L.C.Knight says that well, these are theorizations, but we should look at the particulars, the particular emotions, the particular representation of emotions through words and so on. Then he speaks of the supernatural good, that is, the evil is, of course, much easily observed in the play, but the supernatural good, that is also represented by Shakespeare in the play, particularly with reference to the king's evil, King Edward's power of healing people with touch. At this point, it is necessary to return to what I have already said about the importance of images of grace and of the holy supernatural. So, he speaks of the holy supernatural in the play. For the last 100 years or so, the critics have not only sentimentalized Macbeth, ignoring the completeness with which Shakespeare shows his final identification with evil, but they have slurred the passages in which the positive good is presented by means of religious symbols. In Act 3, the banquet scene is immediately followed by a scene in which Lennox and another lord discuss the situation. The last half of that dialogue is of particular importance. The verse has none of the power of Macbeth's soliloquies, but it would be a mistake to call it undistinguished. It is serenely harmonious, and its tranquility contrasts with the turbulence of the scenes that immediately precede it and follow it. So, what are these lines? Lennox and the Lord, they speak of, they give us the images of grace that contrast with their toil and trouble. Macduff has fled to the pious Edward, the holy king, who has received Malcolm with such grace. Lennox prays for the aid of some holy angel, that a swift blessing may soon return to this our suffering country. Under a hand accursed, and the other Lord answers, he sent my prayers with him. Many of the phrases are general and abstract grace, the malevolence of fortune, his high respect. But one passage has an individual particularity that gives it prominence. This passage, that by the help of these, with him above to ratify the work. With who above? God. God will ratify the work, but Malcolm, Macduff, and Edward, and Seward, they will bring it about. With him above to ratify the work, we may again give our tables meat, sleep to our nights, free from our feasts and banquets, bloody knives. Do faithful homage and receive free honors, all which we pine for now. So the simple joys and rewards of life, a good lunch, a good sleep, receiving honor, receiving reward, all these simple things, they have vanished under the oppression of Macbeth, and they should come back. So L.C.Knight quotes this passage to suggest that through these simple images, Shakespeare is suggesting the idea of good, or the good which is possible with the help of the holy supernatural, with the intervention of God, or with the intervention of holy angels, and so on. Any question?
No, sir.
Now the questions that I have given you, they are very simple because I have explained each and every scene. So mostly the significance of the Porter scene, the banquet scene, and so on and so forth. I am not going to discuss those questions one by one, but I am discussing the critics, particularly some points of view which should enrich your answers, and some I already told you during my lectures, but once again I emphasize it here. Now I come to the essay by Freud, The Character of Lady Macbeth, which I have given you, and I told you that Freud believes that Lady Macbeth and Macbeth together, they are like one personality or one entity. Shakespeare has diversified or bifurcated this one protagonist or villain into two for dramatic purpose. But how do Lady Macbeth and Macbeth turn evil? Gradually, they turn more and more evil. To this, Freud has suggested the childlessness. Now, you remember one line by Macduff when he heard that his children were also murdered then he says that Macbeth has no child. He has no child. Therefore, he can order the murder of children. Freud thinks that childlessness is a major reason for Macbeth and Lady Macbeth going down the path of evil, because they are so frustrated in their biological career, so to say. In Holinshed's Chronicle, from which Shakespeare took the plot of Macbeth, Lady Macbeth is only once mentioned as the ambitious wife who instigates her husband to murder in order that she may herself become queen. There is no mention of her subsequent fate and of the development of her character. So just imagine, from this very brief sketch of Lady Macbeth in Holinshed, Shakespeare creates an altogether different Lady Macbeth. And the sleepwalking scene, that is so powerful. Why is it so powerful? It is entirely Shakespeare's creation. But it is so powerful, it affects the audience so much because the earlier Lady Macbeth is presented as such a strong character, much stronger than Macbeth, who is not afraid of murdering, committing the murder herself, who constantly tells Macbeth that he is a coward and so on and so forth. He is not a man, who constantly insults him or provokes him, prompts him to do the evil acts and so on and so forth. So because in the first half or the first part of the play, Shakespeare created such a strong, powerful character of Lady Macbeth, so that when later she is represented as fragile and sick, the contrast is so much that the sleepwalking scene has a great impact upon the audience. Okay. So this is the art of drama. You build contrast so that it has a great impact. So Freud has very cleverly pointed this out, that in Holinshed, Lady Macbeth is mentioned very briefly, but Shakespeare develops the character in much greater detail. Now, when I said that Freud said that Lady Macbeth and Macbeth, they are split from the same character, Freud, that is not Freud's original idea, but Freud is borrowing from another writer named James Strachey, who uh, in his complete psychological works, he first suggested this. So Freud says that Ludwig Jekyll, the name of the writer is Ludwig Jekyll, in a recent Shakespearean study, thinks he has discovered a particular technique of the poets, and this might apply to Macbeth. He believes that Shakespeare often splits a character up into two personages and do not become so until they are brought together once more into a unity. This might be so with Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. In that case, it would of course be pointless to regard her as an independent character and seek to discover the motives for her change without considering the Macbeth who completes her. I shall not follow this clue any further, but I should nevertheless like to point out something which strikingly confirms this view. The germs of fear which break out in Macbeth on the night of the murder do not develop further in him but in her. It is he who has the hallucination of the dagger before the crime, but it is she who afterwards falls ill of a mental disorder. So in this fashion, Freud goes on to speak of the character of Lady Macbeth, uh, he suggests that it might be the case that Shakespeare split the character into two, and through the two characters, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, he represented different consequences of a guilty mind, how a guilty mind suffers, uh, how a guilty mind that tries to repress facts, evil facts, how that mind turns into a diseased mind and how it suffers. So, as we see that Freud mentions that Macbeth says that sleep no more, Macbeth shall sleep no more. But there is no mention later in the play that Macbeth did not sleep. But it is Lady Macbeth who cannot sleep. Anyway, so this is just one clue. Do you have any questions? So the questions that I have given you, they are very simple. Discuss the character of Macbeth as a villain hero. So, or I do not know the. One may also set the question as discuss Macbeth as a tragic hero, and then you will have to refer to Aristotelian definition of a tragic hero, to which Macbeth does not fully conform, because according to Aristotle, tragic hero should be a good man who has some insignificant difficulty or weakness because of which he falls, and tragedy rises because of the fall of a good man. Now, does Macbeth fully fit this definition? Can we say that Macbeth was a very good man and so on and so forth? It is difficult to say so, because Shakespeare depicted Macbeth just after the first 2-3 scenes as a man who is extremely greedy of power. He is greedy of the throne and so on. He has a lot of temptations and so on. How can we call such a man a good man? A man who does not desist from doing anything for getting the crown. Can we call him a good man? So, Macbeth does not fully fit the Aristotelian definition of a tragic hero, and you may say that therefore he is a villain hero. That is, Shakespeare has created a new kind of a hero, a villain hero. Now, if he is a villain, then why we still call him a hero? Because not only because he is the protagonist, but because he retains the sympathy of the audience till the end. Only a hero retains the sympathy of the audience, the tragic pity. So Macbeth evokes in the audience pity for him, tragic pity. That is why he remains a hero. Discuss Banquo as a foil to the character of Macbeth. Now that I explained when I discussed the scenes. So you will have to look at Banquo's reactions to the witches, how differently he reacts to the witches, and Banquo is represented as a very good man, a man who could be the king. In fact, he has all the qualities of being a king, and he has no evil quality. He has no negative point. Now here Shakespeare whitewashed Banquo, because in Holinshed, Banquo is a co-conspirator in the murder. But Shakespeare makes Banquo completely clean. Why? Because Banquo was the ancestor of King James, and Shakespeare wanted to flatter the monarch. So he presents Banquo as a very good man, a very capable man, a man better than Macbeth. a man who actually should have been the king. Discuss the character of Lady Macbeth. Can she be called the fourth witch? This I have discussed already. Discuss the role of the three witches. So when you discuss the three witches, the play begins with the three witches, and the three witches recur a number of times. They are represented as performing rituals, like in the cauldron scene, and they prophecy. They make prophecies. They equivocate. They mislead Macbeth by their equivocation, and they provoke Macbeth. They prompt Macbeth to move forward and be king, get the crown. So the three witches, they are, as I have told you, that they are drawn from mythology. They are drawn from the three sisters of destiny. They are drawn from the Norse goddesses, but they are also localized. They are represented as shaggy, bearded old women, haggard women, the kind which one could see sometimes in Renaissance England. We have some representations, pictures of bearded women and so on and so forth, who were thought to be witches. So what is the role of the witches? The role of the witches is prompting Macbeth. It is a secondary role. They are not the protagonists, but the witches are not responsible for Macbeth's fall. Macbeth himself is responsible for his fall because all the temptations were already within him, which the witches only fan. Comment on Shakespeare's use of the supernatural in Macbeth. So the supernatural, the witches, the prophecies, the visions, all of these you can mention, but you should also mention the holy supernatural, of which L.C.Knight speaks. And the supernatural was accepted in the Renaissance. The Shakespeare's contemporary audience believed in the supernatural, and Shakespeare himself, whether he believed it or not, he did not commit anything. So he kept the supernatural as something open to explanation. So one who is credulous would explain it as supernatural, others would try to explain it psychologically or scientifically, like in the dagger scene itself. Macbeth himself says that maybe this is a hallucination that I am having, and so on and so forth. The Porter scene, whether it is an interpolation. Kenneth Muir's introduction discusses in detail that the Porter scene is not an interpolation because it contains many contemporary references like the gunpowder plot or the fall of the price of wheat and so on and so forth, which helps to date the writing of the play. So the Porter scene has many images also which are integral to the play, but Coleridge, for example, believed that it is wholly interpolated. Only the last phrase, the primrose way to hell, that last phrase is by Shakespeare, and so on. Discuss the dagger scene. What is the significance of banquet scene? What is the significance of sleepwalking scene? And so on. Short note, King's Table. So okay. So all the questions have been covered, and we have discussed everything in great detail. Now, if you have still any questions, you can ask me. So have you understood the play? Hello? Anybody has any difficulty?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. Then you start writing some answers. You write answers and you can show them to me when I will be in college.